this planet's empty. I see no signs of life. Please don't tell me that the human race did not survive. There are no people in the future. There are no people. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Yes, it is Friday, July 14th, 2023. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Friday Politics Roundup. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Each week, we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. You can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress for all the details. You can also help out the show right now by heading over to our YouTube channel. If you're not there already, smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. And if you're one of our awesome podcast listeners, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen on, and leave a comment to let other folks know why you like the show. Little things like this help other people find the show, support independent, movement-based broadcasting. How about that? Isn't that cool how that works? And yes, indeed, we cannot let Paul Martino and Moms for Liberty and their oligarch friends buy our schools and push their extremist politics in our community. Raging Chicken has teamed up with Levelfield to launch a truly community-rooted PAC to invest in organizing, supporting local and statewide progressive candidates, and unmasking the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. We're putting small dollar donations to work to beat back the power of big money, and you can get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. And a little bit of an announcement for all of our patrons. I mentioned this before. I was going to try to get this done before we went on vacation, but did not. But I've talked to some additional people now, and I think we're in a good space. So I'm going to be putting something in the Patreon for our patrons to be part of a Zoom meeting to talk about strategies for utilizing this PAC money. So here we go. Community-based decision-making too as well. How about that? Well, on this week's show, I'll admit it, I'm a bit of a scattershot today. This is kind of part of the, part of the deal for summer, I guess, what happens. But a lot of stuff happens this week, of course. Climate chaos is just surging like nuts. We saw the flooding in Vermont. We've seen extreme heat in the Southwest that is breaking all sorts of records. Torrential downpour. We saw some loss of life in the Hudson Valley as record fights, once in 1,000-year floods. I hear this like every couple of years now. But this is not just here, right? If you've seen the images coming out of China, also being affected by torrential downpours was unprecedented flooding, knocking out roads, like swamping entire towns. This is getting 2023 is quickly shaping up. The summer of 2023 is quickly shaping up to be a stark preview, I guess, of what's to come. And it's all the more reason to be urgent on this. Also, this just happening, student loan forgiveness. Yep. Well, Biden's back on it. We've got about the cancellation of about $39 billion in student debt for about 800,000 borrowers. Now, there's some caveats to that, and there's the way that's going to happen is a little bit more complex than we would have liked in terms of long-term stuff. But it is good to see them coming back at this. My guess is that we're going to see some additional challenges, but we'll get into that. We're going to see some more things like this. I start thinking about what are some of the little things that we could actually do to actually have an impact on the climate, right? I mean, that we have actually control of in our hands, not something that we have to wait for national action or global action, right? Things that we can actually have an impact locally. And it got me thinking. There was this article in New York Times about this researcher who's come up with this paint, right? And we've known for a while, for example, that painting the roof of buildings white helps cool the building and reflect a lot of that, like a lot of the sun and the heat back into space. Well, there's this like ultra white paint now that they're designing specifically to cool buildings, and it's pretty remarkable. And I said, think about like, what are things that if we actually have, for example, we were to change our school boards, right? And to kind of start lobbying our schools, right, and our municipalities, do this. We could do certain things like this, right? Paint the roofs of buildings white, and to have a dramatic impact, not only on the climate impact, but also on the cooling costs, right? Because part of the problem is that when it gets super hot, the air conditioning goes up, we burn more energy, and it's this vicious cycle. Well, this is kind of one of these ways to stop it. So I want to just talk a little about that today. We saw Iowa Republicans sharply moving to sharply limit abortion. This again is the part of that march toward Christian nationalism that we've been seeing nationwide. Interesting report about there's been this focus. I've seen this in multiple locations about this lake in Canada that research has been taking out these kind of cores of the kind of soil samples, taking I forget what they're calling them now, I'm just spacing it. But you're basically able to see the striations of sediment and things like this happening over, hundreds of thousands of years. Well, I've taken out of this, and we're actually can see now a geologic layer that is embedded with the impacts of humanity, right? And so we've been talking. We've used this term on the show quite a bit. We're kind of especially talking about climate, but the Anthropocene is this. It's been long kind of debated. Are we in this kind of new geologic moment, right? And this lake in Canada, they do this research saying, well, this is kind of clear evidence that we have actually shifted into a new geologic moment that is dominated by humanity. We'll get into that. What else we got today? Some cool stuff coming out of Wisconsin. Maybe we'll get into that. If you've been following any of the reporting that's been coming out of the Bucks County Beacon, that the stuff of what happened at the Moms for Liberty conference or summit, the Joyful Warriors Summit, is still generating news. Probably some of the biggest news that has come out from thanks to the reporting in the Bucks County Beacon. Bucks County Beacon got their hands on some leaked audio of Jordan Adams's closed session at the Moms for Liberty conference. Now, Jordan Adams, of course, is the head of Vermilion Education that's linked to Hillsdale College, that's pushing for a Christian nationalist curriculum, and the first ever public school client is the Penridge School District. And he gave a presentation down at the Moms for Liberty summit that was going on. What to do in the first 100 days? Well, and if you read the transcript of that audio from that closed session, he basically describes what Hillsdale College and Vermilion Education did in the Penridge School District, and now they're kind of putting together as an agenda, a strategy to take over public schools, across the state and country. So we'll get into that a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about what Jordan said. That was big news this week. Great reporting. My wife showed this news. Great. This was a really cool article that was it's actually report, but it was kind of new article. It's called Man the Hunter, Myth of Man the Hunter, Women's Contribution to the I can't see this. Why am I not able to see this? But ethnographic context, really interesting report on article, basically academic research is that looking at taking apart basically this the myth of kind of man the hunter in terms of thinking about human civilization. So it's just pretty kind of remarkable stuff. Although my browser right now is not cooperating and allowing me to see this article, so I'm going to have to see if I can get around that. Talk a little about it. Really cool stuff being published. Pennsylvania still doesn't have a budget. I think we're going to wait probably till next week to really get into the PA budget stuff. What else we got? crazy stuff happening in the developments of AI. This is just kind of one of these interesting ones. It's not like, okay, AI is going to take over and conquer the world, but it's been able to, the help of, these researchers who focus on these kind of 5,000-year-old kind of tablets, right, is able to translate some of them because, it's really painstaking labor and work. So that's kind of interesting. But whatever. Lots of stuff coming up. So we'll see what we can get into today. And then we're gonna kind of set our feet and get ready for next week. So listen, for more PA Progressive Talk, tune into the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, or Facebook. Subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Head on over to ricksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. You also got to check out the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house, and they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at the Night Caucus. That's at the Night Caucus on Twitter, and subscribe to their podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you haven't heard, The Signal is a new podcast from the Bucks County Beacon. The Signal is hosted by the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril Michaleko, and produced by yours truly. Yep. Twice a month, The Signal will shine a light on the right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. Cyril invites guests who could provide insight, analysis, and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community towards calmer, saner, progressive roots. Check them out at thebuckscountybeacon.podbean.com or pick that podcast up wherever you get your podcast. And if you have not checked out this past week's drop, right, you got to do it. I teased this a little bit on Monday's show, but it's actually a special two-part episode of The Signal. The first part, we've got Olivia Little from Media Matters talking about, she was at the Moms for Liberty Summit and talking about her insider view of what happened at the Moms for Liberty Summit and what happened in Jordan Adams' session. That was fascinating. And the part two of that is with Deanna Lagerman from the Central Bucks School District. She's a parent in the district. She ran for school board there before. She's been an outspoken critic at kind of naming, the assault that the school board is under. So she was part two of that. It was a great, fantastic episode of The Signal. Do check that out. Again, buckscountybeacon.podbean.com, wherever you get your podcast. And if you're looking, you just go to buckscountybeacon.com and you can click on the podcast there if you want to see it directly from your browser. For all you gamers out there, the Game Inn is a Quakertown-based Black family-owned gaming store. Friends of the show, they've got everything for retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops. Right? You got to check them out on their Facebook page and follow them on Twitter at the Game Inn. That's with 2 N's. Got a question about a game, looking for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. A special shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff and follow him on his YouTube page. And check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SagaDayMan. Again, 2 N's at SagaDayMan on Twitter. We've got a great show coming up this Monday on Out the Coop Live. This is this Monday, July 17th at 7 p.m. I welcome Alyssa Bowen back to the show. Alyssa is a senior researcher and managing editor of the progressive watchdog group True North Research. She's been on the show before, documenting following the money train through the dark money that is undermining our democracy, that it's undermining elections, that's undermining our school boards, and so on. So she's been on it quite a bit. We've talked about Moms for Liberty. We've talked about a whole bunch of dark money stuff, right? So she's phenomenal. I know that people listen to this show, love when she's on. Well, she's coming back on with a great piece. So we'll be talking about her recent article in Truth Out. It's called A January 6 Moms Group Funded by Big Lie Donors is Stoking Voter Suppression. And I'll give you the spoiler right up front. It's not Moms for Liberty we're talking about. Nope, this is another moms group, quote unquote. The right-wing extremist group Moms for America has been flying under the radar as it works to undermine our rights. They're also funded by these billionaires. They're also kind of, pushing election denialism and election suppression or voter suppression. You got to tune in for this one. It's going to be a great show. Again, Alyssa Bowen for True North Research on this Monday. And look, everybody, if we want progressive future, we need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Just head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. and we're here for the fight, and we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement and the media up. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month. Go to patreon.com/rcpress today. Well, everybody, welcome this morning. I got to say, a little bit of a slow start today, in part because I just got off a call with one of my oldest friends, Stu, over there in Derry, over in Northern Ireland. So we did a little chat this morning. So we've been trying to connect for a bit, but I'm a disaster when it comes to scheduling. As I'm sure if he's listening to the podcast today, he can confirm that I am a disaster when it comes to scheduling. But anyways, we got a chance to kind of catch up and stuff. And it's always that, one of these little checks. It's one thing when you're living through the kind of assaults that we're facing politically in this country. It's another thing to have somebody who's who grew up in this country, but is spent 20 years. He's lived in Northern Ireland now for 20 years, raised family there and all this other kind of stuff. And every time we talk, some version is he'll say, he's like, I just can't get over how this is not the country that I remember. I remember conversations early on when Trump was really getting going, but even before that, but when Trump was really getting going, I remember having, we'd have these discussions, and I would say things like, hey, you don't understand, man. It's like, it's not the same. It's not different. And he's like, yeah, it's like, I just cannot believe that, so we have those kind of course, catch up with family stuff and all that. So, so we got a little bit later start today. And not to mention the fact that my shower was weirdly broken this morning, so trying to get that fixed. So good. But I woke up really in a super positive mode today, in part because I was at a fundraiser last night for the school board candidates, for an organization that's helping support the school board candidates, and the Pembridge Community Alliance, and we're at Free Will Brewing, and just, I got to say, I walked out of that last night feeling so much hope. And I'll talk about that hope just to kind of like in a couple layers. Like, just number one, the people who are running are just awesome. I mean, they're just good people who are invested in the school and their children's education. Several of them kind of were Pembridge graduates, who kind of, went on, and they, went on, got their careers, or on their careers, moved back to the area, in part because they remember having such a positive, time growing up. And then to see all those things that they cared about in the schools, right? All the things that see happening in the community. Whoa, sorry for all the flashing lights. There's this weird thing just happened over here. Yeah, what else can go wrong today is what I gotta say. But it's not gonna change my mood. But anyways, they see this stuff, what's happening in the district, what's happening in their schools, what's happening in the community, and they're like, wait a minute, I gotta stand up. I cannot let this happen. And these are people who've been outspoken at the school board meetings, and they talked a little bit about their stories last night, and people came out and help support them. And so that's the one part. It's just like really good candidates, right? Hold on a second. So anyways, yeah, the really great school board candidates. But then the second thing that was really encouraging is that I don't know how to talk about this other than just this palpable sense, right? It's this visceral sense of organization coming together. Anybody who's worked in kind of any kind of social movement or organizations or things like this is knowing that the business of building a social movement, the business of building an organization takes a ton of time, right? I mean, it should be no surprise that the current power of the kind of the far right in this country was a 50-year project, right? And they've been going at this for a long time, building institutions, building organizations, building a media network, all that kind of stuff, right? And stoking this kind of red meat like on the ground, like building up the kind of extremist street fighters on the ground. So all that's been like a 40 or 50-year project. It doesn't happen overnight, right? And right now, I mean, again, we can talk about why this is and all this stuff, but just as a fact of the matter is that the kind of assaults we're seeing on the school boards in our area and the assaults we're seeing on democracy, frankly, it's taken a while to get effective organizations kind of up and going, right? But I have to say, in the grand scheme of things, historical perspective, it's like, it's been pretty quick. And so to see these, people emerge and take on these leadership roles, not just the candidates, right? I mean, the candidates are one thing, but those candidates, and they know it. They talked about this too, right? They see themselves as part of the community, right? And they know that, like, look, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. Is they are kind of willing to stand up, but with the support of this community, and it's really phenomenal. So anyways, that's the start of my day was where it makes it a pretty good one, I guess. Morning, Ross. Yes, Ross was there. Great evening. I agree. That was fantastic. So let's get into a couple things this morning. So there was this story came across this morning. Amy Connect also sent me a link to a story in NPR, but one of the ones from CNBC kind of breaks it down. Biden administration forgives $39 billion in student loan debt from more than 800,000 borrowers. Now, remember, this is on the heels of the Supreme Court striking down the original plan, which, again, I could spend the majority of the show just talking about how outrageous that decision was for all the reasons. But what this is good to see is the Biden administration not waiting. Because there's been this pattern, less so in the Biden administration, although on certain things this has been true. Even with the student debt stuff has been actually one of the perfect example of this, where they say they want to study things, they're looking at kind of different regions, they're talking about their lawyers, and they're just like all the stuff that happens. And to the rest of the world, those of us that are kind of sitting out here, say, who have student loan debt, those folks who are sitting there, hoping that something's gonna happen for them, are looking and saying, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? You're just talking. You promised on the campaign trail that you were going to cancel debt, cancel student debt, right? And you said, up to whatever, $10,000, whatever it was. And okay, well, where is it? Well, we're still studying it. It's like, well, if you were running on this in a campaign, don't you think you would have studied this? Anyways, so, and what that usually means is that there's those political machinations behind it. There's disagreement in the administration itself over whether or not it's a good idea to do this. And again, look, the Democratic Party is still dominated by those folks from the 1990s, right? Who all they were thinking about is the kind of the conservative, right? The conservative center, and worry that this is going to upset them. And really, there's like no basis for that because it's a dramatically popular, right? But because they, these consultants, they live in Washington, D.C., they're framed in Washington, D.C., they're only thinking about what happens internally between the kind of party politic back and forth there, as opposed to thinking about what's happening in the country as a whole, right? So anyways, my concern, I think the concern of a lot of folks, was that, after the Supreme Court shut down this student loan stuff, that they would just basically, the Biden administration would be like, oh, well, we're going to have to figure things out, and it was going to drag on into the middle of 2024. But this is a pretty quick turnaround, right? So let's take a look. The Biden administration, this is from CNBC, the Biden administration announced that it would automatically cancel education debt for 804,000 borrowers for a total of about $39 billion in relief. Debt cancellation is a result of the administration's fixes to repayment plans, which includes updated counts of borrowers' payments. Okay, so what does this all mean, right? So yes, it's true that that's what's going on. Let me see if I can get this other one up, right? Okay, let me get into the details over here. Okay, let me go back to CNBC one. So here's how it goes. So the Biden administration announced Friday. I'm just going to read a little bit from here, and we can talk about it. The Biden administration announced on Friday that it would automatically forgive $39 billion of student debt, as I said, for 804,000 borrowers. The relief is a result of fixes to the student loan program. So under those repayment plans, right? So here's the relief is a result of fixes to the student loan system's income-driven repayment plans. And under those repayment plans, borrowers get the remaining debt canceled by the government after they have made payments for 20 years or 25 years, depending on when they borrowed, and their loan plan type. Now, here's the key. In the past, payments that should have moved a borrower closer to being debt-free were not accounted for, according to the Biden administration. And they say, quote, for far too long, borrowers fell through the cracks of a broken system that failed to keep accurate track of their progress toward forgiveness. U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona said in a statement. To bring people over the line of forgiveness, the Biden administration counted payments for borrowers who paused their payments in certain deferments or forbearance and those who made partial or late payments. Although the forgiveness is a huge victory for borrowers, it is relief to which they were entitled, said Persis Yu, Deputy Executive Director of the Student Borrower Protection Center. Quote, make no mistake, over 804,000 people are receiving relief with this action because 804,000 failures. This is only the tip of the iceberg, you said in a statement. Working people have been made collateral damage by a dysfunctional student loan system. Right? So why I wanted to talk about that in that detail is because we should see what they're doing here, right? So instead of the Biden administration utilizing the authority it has under the Higher Education Act to just go in and cancel student loan debt. Technically, what they're doing here, they're not doing that, right? And why am I even bringing that up? Well, because in the Supreme Court decision over the Biden's original student loan forgiveness plan, they're basically saying that the administration doesn't have the authority. A lot of people were pushing for the administration to utilize the Higher Education Act initially in cancellation of student loan debt because it says explicitly in that act that they have the power to do so. But instead, they did it under the HEROES Act, right, which also gave them explicit permission to cancel this kind of debt, right? But the Supreme Court disagreed with that, right? So now, if they will go back to the Higher Education Act, utilize the Higher Education Act to do this, which is like legitimately probably the most direct way to do this. And there's, my understanding is they're still planning on doing this, but there's a longer process that's involved with that. But what they did is they said, okay, we're not going to utilize this act. We're not going to kind of like claim new executive authority. All we're going to do is correct some errors, right? Because the banks and the loan servicers or all this stuff were not accurately counting certain kinds of payments, right? They would only count payments that came in at a particular time or, all this other stuff. So when they looked at this, said, okay, let's just correct all this stuff and see what we got. And it turns out 804,000 borrowers are going to have $39 billion worth of debt relief, are going to have their loans canceled. Right? Because they've already met criteria that's there, right? It's kind of a cool move if you think about it, right? Because what it does is it establishes a different beachhead, so to speak, right? It says that, no, this is about good government, right? This is about going about and looking at, this has been a mess, right? And mistakes have been made by the government, and we're going to go and we're going to clean it up. We're going to clean up those mistakes and these people should not have been paying any more money because they should have met the terms of these previously passed plans. It was, 20 years and 25 years. Once you've got to that point, you're done. So it's a cool move, right? I mean, yes, we can have the discussion. Does it go far enough? No. Right? Does it actually do what, the original promises? No, this is not the original promise, right? That's still out there on the table. But nonetheless, this is real, right? Now, obviously, we have to wait now to see if there's going to be like court challenges to this, right? This seems to be a much more difficult thing to challenge, however, since it's not issuing a new, what it's being kind of perceived as a new administrative authority. It's just fixing mistakes, right? And it would be a weird case to bring to say that the government should not be allowed to fix mistakes that it made, right? But we shall see. I mean, again, show me, how many times I've stopped saying, well, it would surprise me if the Supreme Court would take up. No, because clearly they've got their agenda they're going to run through. So there are, enough right-wing think tanks and legal organizations out there that will muster some sort of argument here against this, I'm sure. But this is good news. This is good news. Oh, so I mentioned this too about the climate stuff. I don't know why this is this. I just thought this is really cool. There's this these scientists in Purdue, right, have created this article. Got this linked up in there. It's from the New York Times. To help cool a hot planet, the whitest of white coats is the title of it. But the scientists at Purdue created a white paint that, when applied, can reduce the surface temperature of a roof and cool beneath it. This is kind of really pretty cool. So I'll read you a couple paragraphs of this. This is kind of neat, and I'm sorry that I'm gonna butcher names here. Shiulin Rowan, a professor of mechanical engineering at Purdue University, didn't set out to make it into the Guinness Book of World Records when he began trying to make a new type of paint. He had a loftier goal: to cool down buildings without torching the earth. Right, there's your lofty goal. In 2020, Dr. Ruan and his team unveiled their creation, a type of white paint that can act as a reflector, bouncing 95% of the sun's rays away from the Earth's surface up through the atmosphere and into deep space. A few months later, they announced that even more potent formula that increased sunlight reflection to 98%. The paint's properties are almost superheroic. It can make surfaces as much as 8 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than ambient air temperatures at midday, and up to 19 degrees cooler at night, reducing temperatures inside buildings and decreasing air conditioning needs by as much as, get this, as much as 40%. It is cool to the touch even under blazing sun, Dr. Ron said. Unlike air conditioners, the paint doesn't need any energy to work, and it doesn't warm the outside air. The Guinness Book of World Records comes in because Guinness declared it the whitest paint ever, and it's since it's collected a bunch of awards for this. But that's huge, right? That's absolutely huge. They're also coming up with, this is also interesting, a lightweight version of the same kind of paint, because apparently it's a fairly solid paint that could you could use on vehicles to reflect heat from vehicles, right? It's just remarkable. It's just remarkable. So, so it's, okay, and the details on it, the paint is at least a year from becoming ready for commercial use, and his work is underway to increase its durability and dirt resistance. Dr. Wan said the Purdue team has partnered with a company but can't yet name it. The team is also developing colored paints that use the ultra white as a base. They will work less ideally than the white, but better than some of the other commercial colors, right? And as they say here, as the climate crisis worsens, scientists have been urgently working to develop reflective materials, including different types of coatings and film, blah, 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 it goes on. But this is actually really cool, right? So, I mean, they've done this. I remember reading about this years ago, like in Philadelphia and some other cities around the country have begun doing some of this, right? But it's always, because of the way that our politics work and the way that our lack of, sense that we can do things together as a public, the way that it works, it's always kind of like scattershot, right? You get this initiative here, you get this initiative here, it happens on a limited basis. But these are kind of cool developments that are coming up that which can make a super impact. And, it just got me thinking about, I brought this up on the show before, but I look at what Elizabeth Fiedler, she's got that Solar for Schools bill that we're kind of working to get passed, right? So if we were to kind of utilize our school buildings, right? Because they're public assets, right? They're public areas that we actually have control over and input, and we can make decisions collectively and democratically over the use of this stuff. That we could say, I've always thought, like, well, these are tons of schools who have large flat roofs, right, with no trees overhanging them. They would seem to be these ideal places to put solar farms, right? Because, and again, I'm sure there's not as simple as this, right? Because I'm sure that you need a certain kind of amount of space around, certain areas of the school. So you probably can't do the entire roof of every single building, but you could actually do, I think, a fairly significant part of that. So it would seem like it'd be great, because not only is it utilize that space that's kind of pretty open and free of blockages and get in the sun all day long, right? It's also not taking up land, right? So, you know, people complain, eyesores of a solar farm next to me, whatever. This is on top of a school building that's already there, right? And then you feed that back into kind of the public utilities, which then reduces, you know, during the year, right? Those solar panels, right, are going to generate energy for the school itself. But whether or not that alone would kind of meet all the school's energy needs, I don't know. But it would significantly reduce the cost of relying upon fossil fuel energy, for example, in order to kind of run the school and power it, right? But then in the summertime, for example, or over breaks, when the energy drawdown from the school itself is very low, right, especially during the summer, this would just be generating free energy, right? So that was kind of the thing that was always in my brain, is like, why this makes so much sense. And so to see Elizabeth Fiedler, you know, basically try to get that process going here in Pennsylvania, right, to make it available across the entire state. So that would be kind of like thing if we had a sane school board, for example, here at Penridge or other places like throughout the maybe you already have a sane school board, right? If you're listening to this and not in kind of one of the areas that is dominated by Moms for Liberty and so on. But this would be kind of a cool project. You'd be start introducing for school boards and municipalities that, okay, let's put solar on our schools, right? Let's kind of like make this determination collectively and plan for it, and we can also have the impact. And the great thing about it is, like, not only does it have a tangible and immediate impact on kind of reducing carbon emissions, right, but it also has the long-term impact of reducing cost of energy, right? Great. Now you got this stuff, right? You got this paint. So let's say, for example, we get solar panels up on up on roofs someplace, right? I start even thinking about, my brain goes like this, but solar panels up there and things like that, and you have the rest of the roof is all this white paint, right? That anything that is not being sucked into the solar panels to generate energy, right, is being reflected, right, back into space, right, and helping to cool the building even more. So not only do you have, you're generating energy, but the other kind of the sun hitting the other parts of the roof, right, that would normally heat the building, work against that energy generation, would now be reflected away and actually help to cool the building here. You get like double bang for your buck. That seems like, that's exciting to me, right? And yes, is it, I mean, it's way too late in the game, right? You know, this is, I mean, we should be doing this like 10, 15, 20 years ago, but whatever, here we are. So this, I mean, this is something I imagine in my kind of like, whatever, a kind of excitable, hopeful self, right? If, you know, I'm thinking about our local school board, right? If we have this organization that's being built of community, right? And that's really highlighting, want to bring the community together and kind of want to work together in order to kind of have good schools and boot this extremism out of here. It's like, then you start thinking about, okay, what's the next project? Okay, if say we get these folks elected to the school board, let's say that you kind of like, we kind of like take over the majority of the school board, right? To win the majority of the school board. And not only can then you turn back the assaults that have been happening on the curriculum in the schools, but then you could start doing some exciting things and say, okay, what else can we do together? Right? How else can we have a positive impact upon our community, right? And the world, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know. That's kind of where my brain goes with this stuff, you know? So I just thought that was a cool thing. And it's like, it's the simplest stuff, you know, these researchers, right? Right? And again, these are folks that have understood the problem for a long time. Scientists that have been working on developing to do exactly this. And now, like, again, you cannot say the technology is not there. It's there. It's right there. These folks at Purdue, they've done it, right? You know, I mean, they've been doing it. And now you've got this one. You got this, the ability to do this. I mean, that's exciting to me. So I'm sorry if you don't share my excitement about this, but I just see stuff like this and it's like, you know, it's you know, it's so important. It's just so important, right? You know, when I think about the flip side of this, because you look at what's happening like in the Southwest, right? You know, Phoenix is just baking, right? Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Southern California, to Southern California to a little bit of a lesser degree, but they've all been hit with this, like, you know, 100-degree plus temperatures. Right, I think it was Phoenix, right, which had the was approaching the like here. So for example, it's an article from where's this from PBS, right? On Tuesday, Phoenix reached 110 degrees, right, for the 12th consecutive day, according to the National Weather Service. Now this is okay. Now this was Tuesday, right? Yeah, this is reporting earlier in the week. I should see what that is now, right? The 12th consecutive day, according to the National Weather Service, the longest record stretch so far was 18 days in 1974. This high pressure needed to generate monsoon storms just isn't in the right position, according to state climatologist Dr. Aaron Ann Saffel. So Metro Phoenix is left with below normal precipitation levels and dry conditions that facilitate hotter temperatures. Right? There's been some of this, reporting on Twitter and so on that, there's some great kind of climatologists and kind of meteorologists that kind of report on climate stuff. Have been following this stuff, and you look at, this is just unprecedented, the kind of heating. Right? Hey, Amy, good morning. So that's all, great stuff. Like Las Vegas is going to be hitting, is when the 110s and 115s this week. I mean, it's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts, right? I'm just curious how, where we are. Yeah, here's like a warning that comes out here from this is the National Weather Service. Please do not underestimate the excessively hot temperatures coming up this weekend. Some areas are likely to hit record high temperatures in the 115 to the 120 degree range. Right. This is from yesterday. Right. And you look at the maps, and it's just like the deepest, like purple area. Phoenix was hitting 100 and is forecasting for 118 this weekend. 118, right? I mean, Phoenix has that double problem, right? The double problem that is okay. Not only is it in kind of a desert and it's like hot to begin with, but it's like flat and paved, right? So it just soaks it up. Right. If you go a little bit further to the west, I think this is over the California border. Right. Parker is set to hit 120 degrees. Blythe is set to hit 120 degrees. Yuma 115 degrees. El Centro, right on the border with Mexico, there 117. Joshua Tree National Park 113. Or, I'm sorry, 103. Right. I mean, this is crazy. And I hate to focus on the negative, but I mean, I remember reading Kim Stanley Robinson's book on climate change, right? What was his book? Not 2140. Just spacing the name. Let me see. His book on let me pull it up here. Ministry of the Future. Yeah. His Ministry of the Future. It starts, right? I don't want to do too many spoilers here, but the book starts in India, where the temperature has gotten so hot, right, that it has exceeded the capacity of the human body to cool itself, right? And this is a he's a science fiction writer, but this is set in the near future, and the guy is I mean he does the science, right? I mean he learns about the stuff, and these are the things that are forecast to happen in our immediate future, right? Because you get to a certain part, and if, say for example, if an area loses power and it's 130 degrees or 135 degrees, whatever it might be, and then there's this temperature thing. It's called like the wet bulb temperature. It's like kind of like also a measure of humidity and stuff like this. When you reach a certain temperature, your body can't cool itself and literally cooks itself, right? I mean, it's horrifying. And the book starts with this scene, right? That kind of sets the stage for what gets people going, right? What kind of starts a whole series of events that we have to respond to this stuff. When you start talking about the temperatures of 120 degrees and a sustained level, I mean, it's on one hand, if you were going to be able to stay cool, But if an area loses power, like, several of these areas have lost power because the transformers just can't take the heat. So they pop, right? Power goes out, lose air conditioning, and now what do you do? So yeah, yeah, it's horrifying. So I mean, so I look at stuff like that. The exciting part of it is like, look, we actually have, if those positive moments when we're not just kind of fighting to kind of maintain some sense of, I don't know, decency in the world, democratic control of things, not kind of turn the world over to fascism in our school districts or in our communities, right, or our country. You can see the exciting possibilities if we just take a hold of it. And yeah, we're playing catch up, huge, right? And we are beyond the point where we're going to be able to kind of say stop climate. No, we're already there. The question is like, we're fighting now at this point for a livable future. And so little things like this can be good. But it also points to the reason for my excitement about that is, it also points back to when people organize and talk to each other, and even if around something like the school boards, those organizations can be sustaining, right? If it's you think beyond just a particular issue or a particular political party or a particular election, saying what can we do? What can this organization do to reclaim our communities, right? And so that we start doing things for each other, right? And the future and our kids and all that other stuff. It always brings me back to, the first interview that I ever did, and longtime listeners will know this story, but the first interview that I ever did in Raging Chicken was with Noam Chomsky. He came to speak at Kutztown University, and I said, yeah, what the hell? We had just gotten off the ground. Raging Chicken had just started. And I'm like, yeah, what are the chances I get Noam Chomsky? Well, let's see. Let's check it out. And well, we got him. We got like a 45-minute interview with the guy. And it was on, in the wake of the Occupy movement. And so one of the questions I asked him was, how do you look at this in terms of social movements? What in terms of long-term impact? And in that discussion, he basically said, look, he said, so many social movements start with something very simple and very local, right? They can start from, and I'm going to forget the name of the example he's referring to, but I remember the example. He said, it can start like over a dangerous intersection, right, in a town, right? Let's say, for example, a kid gets hit, or an older person gets hit, or anybody gets hit, and say that it's a persistent problem in that community, this one dangerous intersection. And so people start showing up to their kind of, the city council, their town council, and say, we need to have this. And they start organizing the community around this issue of safety, start talking to each other, right? And then kind of successfully are able to get a stoplight put at this intersection, right? And they see, as Chomsky put it, is like, people need to see victories. They need to see the fruit of their labor, as it were, right? And that becomes absolutely, absolutely critical. And when they see the fruits of the labor, that leads on, it builds that kind of sense of, we can do this, right? And it's just a very human thing. Like the easiest thing to do to stomp down any kind of change is to get people to believe that they have no power, right? That's what neoliberalism is all about, right? You think back to the Margaret Thatcher's, like, there is no alternative, right? Yes, you want a better world. Nope, this is all you get. This is it. We're at the end of history, right? Francis Fukuyama. Although that, I have to say, the Francis Fukuyama piece, the end of history, is a little more complicated than it often has been deployed by the right, but nonetheless. But that whole idea is that you tell people, like, there's nothing they can do, right? Where people are willing to throw up their hands in despair, right? Then, the evil forces can win, right? But when people start saying, hey, wait a minute, we can actually do this. We're learning how, like, the wheels of the machine works and so on. Another story, just like in that same vein, is I remember when I was originally involved in our faculty union back in the early days of my time at Kutztown, like this is probably 2003, 2004. There was a group of us, right, of people at the university, and we got involved in our union. We were frustrated by the lack of any agenda about some, like, this idea that there's, the administration has done these things, haha, let's all laugh about it, but not do anything about it. And we started kind of saying, no, we can actually do things. We did things like we read our bylaws and we learned that, like, hey, this body that we're elected to, we're the ones who should be making the policy, not you people standing at the front of the room, right? Not the executive committee, the body, right? The representative council. We actually are in our bylaws as charged with the power of the body, the power of the union. And so the only thing that has changed is that somehow, somewhere along the way, the body, right, the representative council, stopped exercising its power and ceded it to the kind of quote unquote leadership, right? So we went out, we kind of learned about the bylaws, we learned how things go, and we slowly started to kind of like locally started changing some things, right, in terms of how we did business, about what was kind of foreline and what we should be addressing, right? And so slow process. And then I remember we also then, a bunch of us also got elected to our statewide body, right? So we were statewide representatives. We went into our legislative assembly, which consisted of representatives from across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, from all the state system schools. And we saw a similar kind of dynamic there, at least in our eyes, right? So then we wanted to change that. And I'll never forget the first time we had this kind of proposal. I don't even remember what the resolution was. It's like a freaking resolution, right? It wasn't even kind of like a major change at that point. But we wanted to kind of pass this stuff. We worked all day, we coordinated, we started to meet folks from other universities, started coordinating, got all on board together to do this, went to bring up the proposal, and then one of the old timers, right, basically says, like, I move to table this motion. Someone seconded, and that's it, because under Robert's Rules of Order, there's no debate on a move to table, right? And enough of the people, we hadn't done enough work getting more people on board, right, to prevent that. And we didn't even know about it, frankly. So we learned our lesson, right? We learned that they shut us down because we didn't know the rules effectively. So we went and we learned the rules, right? So next time we came back, we knew how to stop that, right? We knew we needed to do more work of talking to more people, right? That we couldn't just rely upon a small group of people in order to do, like, little things like that, right? That's like the work of organizing, the work of organization building, right? The work of caucus building. And, but it takes time, right? But this is the same kind of stuff that's happening now, right? We're seeing this in our communities. We're seeing that kind of organizing that is working. And, the sky's the limit. I mean, and this is, I think, what, frankly, the right wing is afraid of, right? Once they realize, once they are working to do everything they can to one to disenfranchise people, secondly, to create a sense of despair that nothing can be done, and third is to kind of limit access to the wheels of power, right, and to make these executive decisions. But right now, I'm sure there's a lot of folks that are really, really nervous because they start seeing what's happening in these organizing drives at local school boards, and what the community is doing, and we're starting to recognize our own power, right? That's fantastic, because once we do that, man, it's pretty freaking awesome. Listen, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the recent released audio clip from Jordan Adams from the Moms for Liberty. Maybe some other things in the Beacon. There's a ton of stuff we could talk about, but I think we should close out talking about that today, because frankly, it was absolutely amazing, right? So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the Jordan Adams at Moms for Liberty. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. I want to remind you can help support this podcast and all the work that we do, heading over to patreon.com/rcpress. You become a patron today. As an added bonus, you become a patron, right, before kind of next week. Then you will kind of get that invite to kind of join us to talk a little about how to best deploy and utilize some of the PAC funds that we're kind of raising, and how to make that even more impactful going forward. All right. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. And we're going to be back right after this quick break, I think. There we go. Hey everybody, welcome back. Sorry, a little longer break than I normally take. This is Kevin Mahoney once again, editor and founder of Raging Chicken, and we're just going to close out today's show by just kind of really focusing in on one, what a I don't know, what a gift the Bucks County Beacon has been to not just Bucks County but Pennsylvania and beyond. The work that Cyril Mikaleko and the folks over at the Beacon are doing is invaluable. I mean, I would think I talked, like I said, I was at this fundraiser last night. Talked to a bunch of people that couldn't say enough about the Beacon. I mean, say like, thank God for the Beacon, thank God for the Beacon, thank God for the Beacon. And yeah, 100%. If you want, there's so much, initially before this audio dropped from Jordan Adams, before this audio dropped, I had a bunch of stuff. I said, well, let's focus in on this and this and this and what from the Beacon. But this is, this is just so amazing that I always spend the time with this. So as you know, that the Beacon was doing some reporting already from the Moms for Liberty, right? They had a kind of reporter kind of down there checking it all out, right? We had they were banned from the they were banned from the closed sessions. The media was locked out. They were called opposition media, right? All this fun stuff. But that's yeah. Anyways, they're doing all that kind of stuff. But so there was reporting that kept on coming out, right? About the about what was going on down in the Moms for Liberty Summit. There were some reports that people were giving that about Jordan Adams' appearance, and one of the things that we talked about, or Cyril talked about on the show, the Signal, Bucks County Beacon's the Signal on Wednesday with Olivia Little. She was at there, right? She and one of her colleagues was in this session, and so she broke down some of the things that Jordan Adams had said, right? About he basically released this plan of like the first 100 days of the new school board in office, what to do, how to do it, and how to take a district over in a short period of time, right? And so, that was that was something, right? And you hear her talk about what was going on, and hear her talk about what happened was just, crazy, right? And one of the things that that Olivia Little said on that show was that, and she did great reporting on this too. Go check out her stuff on Media Matters. I mean, her report coming out was just outstanding. That came out earlier on in the week. Media Matters, talking about the Moms for Liberty conference. And one of the things that kept on coming out, right, that kept on kind of that came out in Jordan Adams stuff, is you want to throw as much stuff at people as possible so they can't keep up, right? That alone, right? That strategy. Remember, we talked about this several weeks ago. There was that school district in Colorado, right, that had this rapid turnover in the board, and I think it was either the new chair of the board or whatever it was interviewed, and one of the things he talked about openly, he said, yeah, we're going to do what Trump did, right? Basically, Trump threw so much of things that nobody could keep up with what was going on, and then he was able to push through these agendas. So that was in the consciousness. Of course, the question is, to what degree was that strategy kind of injected into that school district by one of these kind of national organizations, and so as kind of like a top-down thing, and to what degree is that strategy already embedded in the far right movement at this point, where this is kind of the normal? That's unclear. But so when Jordan Adams basically gave a presentation, this is kind of what he was doing, and he was walking through what to do month by month, what happens in January, what happens in February, what happens in March, and so on, right? Well, that comes out. Olivia Little publishes this. There's great reporting in the Beacon on on Moms for Liberty. We're seeing reports coming out from other news media too as well. Great stuff. And then this happened, which I did not see coming. This was the kind of thing when we're recording the episode for the signal, right? It was like nowhere even the kind of in the realm of possibility, that you would see something like this, because they had shut media out. They were kind of like trying to be hush hush and close out about this, but in part I think because of all the reporting that the Beacon has been doing on Moms for Liberty, somebody who was at that session, right, somehow recorded the entire session and leaked it to Vermilion. Now it's unclear. If you listen to the recording, it sounds like it's there's at the very beginning there's like ruffling around, stuff like that. It's unclear if this is recorded by someone initially, that this was supposed to be something for Jordan Adams, right, to kind of remember the session or whatever it might be or whatever. But nonetheless, they got the recording, and not only did the Beacon almost immediately publish the recording, right, so you could hear it all yourself, they did a transcript of the recording, right? The transcript of the recording is absolutely incredible, right? The transcript of the recording is amazing, because that allows you to do things like search what he had to say and read it word for word, right? And not have to listen to his pitiful voice throughout all of this, right? That's what's absolutely incredible. So one, I want to encourage you to go check that out, right? One, again, I'll put a link in the show notes, right? Leaked audio. If you haven't seen it already, I'm going to drop this right now into today's chat. Leaked audio of Vermilion Education head Jordan Adams' presentation of Moms for Liberty, right? That's the title of it. Go look at the Beacon, and then look at the transcript. So just to give you an idea of what this was about, right? So I'm going to read you a little bit of the transcript here, right? This is the presentations, the first 100 days, getting flipped school boards to take action. So this is the idea, is like, okay, look, you already got your school board elected to get this new majority of kind of, far right thing, or kind of anti-democratic Christian nationalist folks elected to the school board, right? What do you do then, right? So this is the strategy to go forward. So so he says, okay, one point to lay out here is something for the first 100 days about these are the things that the board should be pursuing. And these are the things that you should be expecting them to pursue. These are the things that your candidates should agree to take action on when they get in there. You need to know these things, hold them accountable to it, and make them commit to it. Then, like I said, what I'm bringing to the table here is the inside information. I'll tell you in a couple of the boards that this has come up with that they have a contract with me. I'll say more about it in a second. The right people are freaking out because the fox is in the henhouse. They've never had somebody in there in the details that knows what they are about. And I'm sitting across from a superintendent, and we both know the game that's being played right now. We may be the only two that do. One thing I'll caution against, though, whoops, I'm sorry, he said something random. How long have I been doing that for? He did something other, right? So one thing that I'll caution against, though, is don't call me an expert. And he goes on to this thing about railing against experts, right? So it's a great thing. So when he says, I'm going to give you the inside information, what this 100-day plans is, from my reading of this, right? There's two ways, at least two ways, to read what he lays out in this presentation. The first one is that this was already the plan going in, right? That this was the plan going in, that once he got hired by the Penridge School Board, to be this outside consultant, that he had this plan. He was already communicating with the school board ahead of time. We already know, thanks to Jordan Blomgren saying this publicly at the school board meetings, that she began talking with Hillsdale College, right, way back in the fall of 2022. right? And then Jordan, and she was talking with Jordan Adams when he was still part of Hillsdale. And then she contacted him again, looking for him. Turns out he left Hillsdale to contact Vermillion, and so she continued that conversation. So what it's unclear at this point is, like, in those conversations with Jordan Blomgren and the Penridge School Board, to what degree did did Jordan Adams basically lay this 100-day plan out to them, her in particular, Jordan Blomgren in particular, about how to proceed, right? When did that exactly kind of happen? Did that happen when it was Hillsdale College? That plan was still kind of formed there? Or was this something that Jordan Adams started with Hillsdale? We don't know. But I will say that there's also an interesting move, because look, ultimately what the Vermillion education is about, it's about making money, right? I mean, these people, not only do they have a kind of a Christian nationalist fervor, right, and kind of like they're driven by, dogma, right, to enact this stuff. They think they're doing God's work by doing this stuff, right? So you got true believers, right, who have deep faith in this. But as we know, right, the right wing in this country is also really good about being kind of like all in on the dogma, all in on the kind of ideological driven stuff, but finding every possible way to make bank, right, to run the grift, right? So the second way of looking at this is not so much that this was the plan that they had thought about ahead of time moving in, but this is basically a description of what they did in the Penridge School District. But he's presenting it to the Moms for Liberty folks, right, as the agenda that they accomplished, right? So in other words, right, so if you hear how he's talking here, it's like he knows he's talking to activists. He knows he's talking to Moms for Liberty activists here. And basically the assumptions are that, one, you, Moms for Liberty, are recruiting school board members or people to run for school board. But once they win, right, you need to stay on them, right? Keep them accountable. You remember we talked about this with Mark Engler, right, when he was on the show a few weeks back, right? One of the things in that social movement, a social movement candidates, right, means that there has to be degrees of accountability between the movement and the candidates, right, that are not dependent upon traditional modes of support, right? And so this is like the right wing already knows this. They've been doing this already, right? So that's kind of who he's talking to. He's saying, like, this is, okay, your candidates, right? These are your candidates, and now how do you make sure they do the right thing, quote unquote, the right, capital R, right thing they do when they get in there? Well, this is what you need to do. And here's the plan, right? And he's presenting himself, right? This is a new company for him, Vermillion, for-profit company going in, right? And he wants the business of Moms for Liberty, right? He wants to make sure Moms for Liberty looks to Jordan Adams and Vermillion Education anytime they kind of get a new school board ready to go, right? So he's presenting to them, say, hey, this is what we bring to you. This is what we offer. You get me in there, I've got a 100-day plan for you. And I'm going to lay it out month for month, right? And he can say to them, he doesn't say this explicitly here, he could say, like, when I went to Penridge School Board, I presented them with, here's the 100-day plan, and they followed it to a T, and look what they were able to do. He doesn't quite say that like that, right? For all we know, right, all he's doing here is he's describing what he did in the Penridge School District, what he did in the Penridge School Board, and then writing it all down. Oh, what did we do in January? Well, we did this, we did this, we did this. I'm going to clean that up a little bit, and I'm going to say that this is our agenda, and this is our strategy, and this is our plan. Because ultimately, right, the Penridge School District is, we are the lab rats for Vermillion Education's Christian nationalist agenda, right? We are the lab rats. And so he's like the little guy charting out, what happened after we kind of did this to that experiment? Oh, this is what happened. I'm going to chart it down. And I'm going to pretend that I knew what the hell I was doing, that I told them to do this ahead of time, right? And look how successful it's been. It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It's like okay, I go out and I kind of fall down, and I kind of fall down by this, I fall down in this hole, right? And it turns out at the bottom of the hole, there's a box full of gold coins, right? right? And I say, oh my God, I found these gold coins, right? But if I turn it around, I could pretend I knew what I was doing and say, well, okay, I took out my compass, right? And I decided I was going to head due west, right? Through this thicket of the woods, because I had a feeling that in that thicket of the woods, back in kind of 1743, there was a group of kind of like bandits that ran through here. And so I was going in that direction because I knew it was the right direction. If you walk far enough in that direction, that you're going to find this gold coin. Oh, and I fell into and I found the hole and I fell. I found the hole and crawled about them, and there are the gold coins were. See? So with this new compass that I have, you can do this thing. You know, that kind of thing, right? Something that started out as kind of like haphazard accident, right, that ended up with a positive result from one, with a bunch of gold coins. This is Vermilion Education going and saying, oh shit, now we're a part of a school board. Now we're part of a public school board. We've never done this before, right? We never had to do with these kind of particular dynamics. So we're going to take notes about what we're doing, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to pretend that this was our that this is the agenda that we had all along, right? And we know this was their agenda, right? But the systematic way in which he's presenting it seems to be a description of what he's doing and has done in the Penridge School District, right? And it goes through like now day one. So just again, here's an example, right? There was a presentation. He gave out apparently gave out a whole packet of materials to everybody there, documenting this stuff, right? And he says now in January, and I understand some school boards take over in December, and then also do your math, on the school board map here, and figure out how to adjust this for your community. So he's basically assuming that new school board members for this presentation start in January, but can you adjust it based on it? So in January, okay? So here are the things. One, and this is very important to enact some sort of document preservation policy order, whatever it is. The reason I say this is because you can guarantee if somebody starts snooping around in there, things are going to start being deleted. And then you're going to come up with a big nothing burger, and you can go and you're going to have egg on your face. The board should go in at the very first meeting, say, we're establishing this policy that for these types of documents, you need to keep them. You may not delete them. They stay where they are. Number two, and some of these will also involve discussion, that one's somewhat straightforward. Number two, start demanding info at the first board meeting and make it due at the second board meeting the next month. This includes things such as the percentage of students who are not proficient even in a given grade or a subject based upon available tests, and if they're going to throw 22, 23 scores out at you or your school board, ask them for the 2019, as well as because I guarantee you things were better, but not that much better before the lockdowns, right? So basically what he's saying, right? So you're talking about these proficiency scores. So he wants to make sure you get the 2019 ones, but also the 2020 and 21s, so that you can actually cite the stuff that you want. So first thing you say, okay, you go in, you could preserve this. Now what's interesting, right? In states that have like, public records laws, there already should be doing this, right? But whatever, it says this. Also then says, go ahead and you want to get a list of every contract, right? That is invoices and free services that are provided to the district, right? You want all this kind of information that you're going to kind of gather to figure this stuff out. What's the third thing to say? Okay, you're all new board members. We'd like to access to the curricula, whether that's a physical copy of it, whether it's as many school districts, what many school districts do is they have an online portal or some online database that has all this information on it. Please give us our own account. Set it up for us so that we can see the same things that the district staff are seeing. Authorize the board to explore bringing in somebody from the outside to look at what's going on, to look at the curriculum for transparency, quote unquote. What is happening in our schools for curricula, what are students encountering every day, for teacher training, how are teachers trained, contracts, who are we letting into our schools, for our strategic plan, what does this reflect our goals and values of the parents and the community, and then for each one of these, is that appropriate, right? There we get all the kind of appropriate stuff. As he goes down this agenda, right? Number 6, and I think is something we're overlooking, and I think that there's really a huge opportunity here. Begin advertising your district and the teaching positions that might be coming up for next year. By January and February, a lot of schools are getting their intent to return forms from teachers about whether or not they're coming back next year. They're starting to piece together the sense of how many openings they will have. Start advertising. Start pointing out that your district isn't going to be doing X, Y, and Z. Start going to different colleges that have a good reputation. Contact their career services office to get an ad in their school paper. Advertise the values of your district that you brought there and what the board is implementing. This is important because all these changes won't mean anything if the personnel aren't on board with that as well. People's policy, right? So think about what just happened there. And first going in and getting access to all these contracts. Why are they getting access to all the contracts and everything? Because they want to see which contracts are coming up, right? That are going to come up for renewal, that they can cancel and hire their people instead, right? What are, say, curriculum supervisors, right? Like you saw this happen in Penridge. Like, if there's an outside organization that is there and doing consulting work around curriculum, when is their contract up? Well, if it's coming up right now, then we can just not renew that contract, and then we could put one of our people in there. This is about a wholesale plan of replacing personnel and resources and redirecting public funds to people who are on board with the ideological agenda of these Christian nationalists, of Jordan Adams, Vermilion Education, Hillsdale College. Keep on naming them down the road. Moms for Liberty, right? That's great. When you start by the time he gets to this number 6, now he's talking about, okay, now that there are these markers, right? There's intent to return forms that teachers return. Yes, I'm coming back next year, right? This is kind of like a routine thing that happens in many teaching jobs, right? And when they start to come in, they're gonna have a idea about how many openings are coming up. And usually what happens is that there's an established procedure, right? That the school district, you have an opening that comes up, that you have a relatively generic ad, then you fill in some of the details for, what the specific position is, and you post it in these places that they're normally posted, right? They want to stop that. They don't want that machine to keep on rolling, right? Instead of saying, okay, we're just going to go through these established procedures. No, what we're going to do is now we are going to find ways of using those job ads to get the kind of teachers and staff into the district that we want. This is in Penridge right now. This is absolutely critical. Why? Well, we've lost several dozen teachers who have, some of them just retiring, others of them are leaving for, 1, better pay, or 2, to get the hell out of the craziness because they just don't want to be having to deal with this all the time. They spent years working on a curriculum and then they watch it kind of get stripped away, right? All their labor gone, right? They can't stand being in a district that is attacking LGBTQ students, right? I mean, you name the reasons, right? The variety of reasons that are out there, but they're all these. So now they're gonna have to hire new teachers for the fall. This guy was already on this months ago, already saying we're gonna redirect ads and we're gonna go to colleges of our choice. Guess where? Yep. You can guarantee that this guy is going to right-wing colleges, Liberty University, is probably going to Hillsdale College, is probably going to departments of education that have conservative faculty in them, asking them to circulate around. All that kind of thing is being orchestrated, right? I mean, it's one thing to assume that this is going on. It's another thing to have the guy who was hired by the district lay it out in plain view, black and white, as it were, about that, yes, we are doing this, and we want to encourage you to do this to your school district too. If you remember, one of the things, I had this discussion, I can't remember if I had this discussion on the air, if this is a discussion I had with somebody about this, but we saw the superintendent of the Penridge school district, Superintendent Bolton, Dr. Bolton, is leaving, right? He went on medical leave. He was supposed to be the end of January, announced that it was going to be extended into October, and then he was going to terminate his contract, right? So that is now giving the school board several months to get prepared to hire a new superintendent. And I said at the time in this conversation, I can't remember, like I said, I don't know if I had it on air or not, but this is like a perfect setup for them, right? By them, I'm talking about, the kind of red wizards of Thay who are kind of controlling the school board right now. We're talking Megan Bannis Clements, talking Jordan Blomgren, Ricky Chaikin, right? That crew, right? And they're two like male lapdogs that are on the board too, right? They're in a position now to basically say they can be quote unquote transparent about their hiring process, right? So they can put together an ad, and I mentioned this like last week that they put on, or earlier in the week, they put an ad or a survey out to parents. What are your priorities? And so I like this. So they are demonstrating, right? They're going through the motions of appearing to be transparent and wanting to have community input, right? So that's the official actions of the board, because they are publicly elected, right? They are elected by us, and they are kind of bound by certain degrees of public laws. Jordan Adams, however, is a private entity, right? And I guarantee you, as soon as Bolton decided he was going to get out of here, what Jordan Adams can do is say, there is going to be an opening at this school district where I am the consultant. We are rewriting the curriculum. We need people like you. I would encourage you to apply. Right? And that goes through their networks. All that happens outside of public view. So then the candidates who come forward, right? And again, this doesn't mean all the candidates, but the candidates who are encouraged to apply for that are already ideologically leaning in that direction. Right? Now the goal, again, if I were to put on my kind of like evil, like, you know, like conspiratorial thing, if I was on like Vermilion Education, right, what I would want, and I would tell the board that I would want, in order to kind of really change this into a Christian nationalist, like a school board or school, right, all with public funds and under like the auspices of public schooling, what I would do is I would go and I would say, hey, you know what, we want to make sure that we have at least 3 to 5 good candidates that agree with our ideological position, right? Because what we want to demonstrate to the public, right, is that we're interviewing multiple candidates and say, sure, we should get some of those candidates. We should get some of those candidates who are not on board with us, right? Just so that they're in the mix, right? But then you have this, you know, your interview process and all that kind of stuff, and you weed it down to like maybe 2 or 3 candidates, right, that are your finalists, right? And those 2 or 3 candidates basically are already on board with your agenda. Now what you want to do from your Red Wizards of Thay, right, mind frame, what you want to do at that point is you want to say which one is going to be the most aggressive in getting your agenda passed. And so now you're putting these 3 people, 2 people, whatever, in competition with each other over who is going to be more vigorously enact your agenda. And all the public sees is like, okay, it's like a hiring process, right? That's the value of this transcript that the Bucks County Beacon published, that kind of thing. So instead of us having to second guess ourselves to say, well, you know, is this too far? Is this actually like, am I just kind of like overthinking this? Am I thinking like too conspiratorial or whatever? Like, no, it's right there. It's their plan. Literally their plan. Here's another one. Now, that was all in January, by the way. So February, right? Here's this February one. Get moving. Start enacting, introducing policies. I call these no-brainer policies. A lot of these are being laid out by groups like increasing state affiliates and other model policies. So state affiliates, you're talking about everything from like the Koch brothers networks, right? From these, you know, a whole range of right-wing think tanks. He gives a shout out to the Heritage Foundation here about putting together these policies, right? Model policies that the school board members, newly elected school board members, don't even need to think about because it's already ready-made. We've seen this with the Leadership Institute, right? That right-wing law firm that has been involved in Central Bucks School District and Penrith School District, and a bunch of districts across the country, or across the Commonwealth and country, right? But across the Commonwealth, right? We had Chris Ullery on the show, right? Talking about this and talk about their reporting, what they've been founding, right? So those policies are ready-made and being introduced by these right-wing organizations, right? So here, start introducing policies on, you know, these are the no-brainer policies. Start introducing policies on CRT, eliminating DEI offices, renewing contracts and initiatives, eliminating student surveys, right? Everything that they've done in the Penridge School Board. And then he says, look, when I went to school, we didn't do surveys ever. In fact, there is so much that's going on in our schools right now that is novel within the last 5 to 10 years. We were doing fine before that. Maybe there were ways to improve, but we're not going in the right direction here. Just get rid of surveys. There's no reason for any of that at all, he says. What kind of surveys? Surveys like, do you feel threatened at school? Have you experienced bullying? Do you feel safe? that are asking questions about the climate of the school. Because what happens in that kind of data? Well, in that kind of data, in those kind of surveys, you find out that LGBTQ students are being bullied and assaulted and discriminated against. You find out that black students and students of color are coming in and being discriminated against, that they're not feeling safe, they're being excluded from that community. When you ask students, you ask teachers about what the experience is like, no, we don't want that information. We do not want any data that will contradict what our agenda is going to be. Because if you take away that information, you take away that data, right? You kind of like destroy a foothold that the other side will have in terms of pushing back. And they did that. And they did that. It's really crazy. Here's another one, all right? This is, I'm only going through and doing this because I want you to go see this stuff. I want you to go read this article, the Bucks County Beacon. I want you to, or listen to the audio of Jordan Adams. I'll just warn you ahead of time. He's not exactly the most compelling individual. So it's a little boring, but that's okay, right? But it's good to hear it firsthand too. You'll like this one. So get into the library and look at all their purchase orders or donations. They have to catalog all this stuff. Review the catalog on all books added within the last 5 years here. And don't forget about the donated ones. It's not just the ones that are purchased, but the ones that are donated as well. Come up with a book objection process. And I know that some states are putting this in place. I'm going to go a little bit against the grain on some of this. I don't think you need to form an additional committee on this if you're a good school board. You're already the representatives of the people in the community. You can make a judgment about whether or not this book, it should be there or not. You're in a spot where you're not controlling, if you're in a spot where you're not controlling the school board, then it goes on for that. Right? Just what they did at Penridge. And you recall, multiple individuals at the school board meetings went up and kind of raised objections, right, to what they're doing and saying that you are taking control of the problem. They're like, no, the school board's not making a decision. This was true in Central Bucks, right? Central Bucks said this all of the time. No, the school board's not making this decision, right? We got a process that we go through here, right? Behind the scenes are doing this. They did this at Penridge, right? Initially they said, oh, there's a process we're going to go through. But at that last meeting, right, we put up all those freaking videos, right? Clips out of that meeting where Jordan Blomgren, when she went on her kind of like, I'm going to read sexually explicit things here for my own gratification, right? I'm going to read this whole thing out of this book, right? She basically said, okay, no, she was talking about a book that went through the process and was deemed okay to remain in the library based upon the rules that were already set there. But Jordan Blomgren said no. She said, I disagree with that and they need to be held accountable. So she's going to take it over, and the school board itself was then inserted there so that they can make decisions. This is about a centralization of power. Everything that Jordan Adams talks about in this piece is about centralization of power in the hands of the Moms for Liberty backed people or associated organizations. Right? Should I get one more? There's one that happens down further. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, here you go. This is the one I wanted. Okay, so he talked about the first thing and second thing, talks about the administration and so on. So it's not going to make entire sense. We're going to talk about the second thing, but this is important. The second thing to keep in mind is to not let anybody off the hook. I'm going to, because that back page on this handout that he's got, that back page talks about the ways in which folks try to get off the hook. Keep getting these reports, keep asking for information, keep having them shared, ask questions about everything that's in there. Some people self-select out of certain things because sometimes they're like, yes, I can't work for this board. I don't really want to do this anymore. Then that's fine. So in other words, keep up the pressure on other members of the boards where they find this untenable to continue working for that board anymore, so that they'll just quit or they don't want to be on it because they cannot handle the insanity, right? Push them out. Use the informal mechanisms to push them out. Then he says, anyways, this is the important part. The third one is to remember that your attorney, that is the district's attorney, is not usually an ally. The one thing that board members are scared to death of is having a lawsuit on their hands, especially one that has big dollar amounts tied to it or is threatening to be tied to it. Attorneys, by their nature, are risk averse generally. They are not going to push the envelope on something that they are taking a risk on. Then a lot of them are also not on the side of the board. I know there are a number of state organizations that are trying to figure out ways to get counsel to school boards that are giving a second opinion, as it were. Just keep this in mind and make sure that your board members have this in mind as well. Be proactive with your PR and social media. This is one of the things I'm realizing quite a bit with boards, is that there's not a whole lot of. They're not getting the message out. They might be out there in the meetings talking about this, but they need to have some account or their own account to get it out there. That doesn't mean play whack-a-mole and address everything in there, because that'll drive them nuts. That's not good. To have an alternative viewpoint or an alternative point coming out that they can reflect on and other people know, oh, they have an answer for this. They have an answer to something they pointed out and worked against, right? The key thing there is that you've got organization like that. They're actually saying you need to go around your district's lawyer, right? Because people are afraid of lawsuits. Of course they're afraid of lawsuits, especially if they're doing things that violate the law. That is the role of places like the Leadership Institute, right? These right-wing legal think tanks, right, that are coming into providing free legal advice as a second opinion. It's the very language that we've been seeing, right, in all these districts, right? And we've been seeing this over in Central Bucks, right, extensively. We've seen this here in Penridge, right? There was also a similar issue that was going down in kind of Souderton, right? So we got this. So, okay, I'm going to stop now because I could do this all day, but I can't. So here's what I think we should do, right? I think that this makes a whole lot of sense, that wherever you are, whatever school board that you're kind of involved with organizing or so on, whatever community that you're part of, because look, they're going after public libraries too as well. This is not just school boards, right? They're going to be going after the municipalities too as well. They're going to use the same kind of playbook, right? This is the perfect opportunity to break this stuff out, right? And to put together like basically a playbook so that we can see what's coming, right? What's going on. That's something I'm going to be working on certainly. I know there's a lot of other people that are going to be working on breaking this stuff down, but this is the kind of thing that we can work on collectively, right? These are the kind of things that we can have like meetings and say reading groups about. Let's look at this stuff. Let's break this down and let's kind of let's think about how we respond to each one of these things, right? Because look, Jordan Adams is a hack. Jordan Adams is a grifter. Jordan Adams is just a tool of this kind of right-wing educational facility, right? And yes, I don't mean to just say he's a tool because that kind of like takes away his agency. No, he is part of that grifting, ideologically driven Christian nationalist agenda, right? He's an adult. He makes his own decisions. No, somebody's not using him. He is using himself to do this and making bank on it. So what we need to do is say, here's an opportunity. Rarely do we get this kind of opportunity to see these kind of documents, to see like someone talk so directly about the playbook and start thinking about not just this particular, how to push back now, but how do we strategize moving forward, knowing this is coming. Penridge, unfortunately, we have to put our defenses on and push back hard against this guy in particular, right? You might be listening in your school district, know that this is coming too. The more that we start sharing information with each other, the better, is more from my perspective. But anyways, so kudos once again to the Bucks County Beacon. Just phenomenal, right? Just absolutely phenomenal work. And I'll put out, look, right now, you want to see more of this stuff? Well, you know what you can do? You can go right on to buckscountybeacon.com. You click on support the Beacon, and you can contribute to them, and you become a kind of continuing contributor to support the work and support the journalism that's coming out of there, which is really, really what we need. And I know, there's a lot of I'm sorry, I should have given her a shout out before. Pat LaMarche, I'm sorry. Pat LaMarche is the Bucks County Beacon reporter that was down there in for Moms for Liberty. I don't know why I didn't mention her name before. I just realized when I was looking at her article, I'm like, oh crap, I didn't mention Pat's name. But Pat LaMarche did great work while she was down there doing that. So, right. It might seem a little weird, for some folks who normally work in this space to sit there for meetings to promote, like, the Bucks County Beacon, another kind of media outlet, and saying, hey, go out and support them too as well. At the same time, I'm telling you, say, hey, look, go to patreon.com/rcpress to help support this work, right? Look, in a perfect world, right? Not even a perfect world. In a world that we have the ability to create, there's a future, right, in which we start to coordinate kind of like as a kind of a media network or something, where we're able to kind of provide a central location to kind of support these kind of different plans we got on. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist right now, right? That's something we have to create, kind of step forward. So the idea is that we need to support everybody, right? I know it sucks, right? It's like, oh my God, what are they? But this is really, really what it is. I'll sit there and I will kind of say, when there's this good work out, I will shout them out because I want other people to go there. I want other people to support them. I want other people to read this stuff, right? Not just because it's with the Bucks County Beacon, but because the information there is actually critical to this, to the health of our communities. Right? So that's it. So anyways, I'm going to cut it at that point, right? This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. I am going to cut this out for today, and I'm going to wish you all the best. Hope you have an awesome weekend, and I look forward to the days ahead. Strongly encourage what's happening in our communities. Awesome work on the fight back, everybody. Love you all. Thank you for support. Again, head on to patreon.com/rcpress, and you can help support the work that we do here at Raging Chicken, and all the people out there in the community. Man, you rock. Talk to you soon. Right, everybody? You know this part, right? You know this part. This is the part that I go, hey there. See ya!
I guess I'll fly